what if the biggest barrier to your future isn't like a lack of money or bad luck or even your genetics?
Right.
What if the absolute greatest obstacle standing between you and the life you want is literally the memory of your past?
That is the big question.
It is. So welcome to the deep dive. If you're joining us today, it means you have an appetite for the profound, the mysterious, and honestly, the scientifically mind-bending.
Oh, absolutely.
Today, we are exploring the very edges of the boundaries between science, biology, and mysticism. Our source material for this journey is Dr. Joe Dispenza's groundbreaking book, Becoming Supernatural. And our mission for this deep dive is to really unpack the hard science behind seemingly miraculous human potential.
Yeah, we're talking about everything from spontaneous physical healing to actually altering our genetic expression through thought alone.
It sounds impossible, I know.
It sounds completely sci-fi. But what's fascinating here is that we aren't just looking at, anecdotal miracles or inspirational stories. No, not at all. The source material is anchored in measurable data. We're going to be looking at functional MRI brain scans, heart coherence monitors, and the deeply complex world of epigenetics.
Right.
We're diving into the exact biological mechanisms, the cellular and neurological why behind transformations that most traditional medical models just consider impossible.
Okay, so let's unpack this because we are going to tease out some genuinely incredible journeys today.
Yeah, we really are.
We have a case study of a woman who literally healed her body from paralysis and a highly aggressive cancer.
Unbelievable stuff.
And we're going to look at controlled scientific studies where people gained actual physical muscle strength without moving a single finger.
It breaks your brain a little bit to think about.
It really does. And then toward the end of our deep dive, we are going to explore the quantum field and the eternal present moment. But before we get to the modern neuroscience, before we start talking about neurons and DNA, we have to lay the groundwork.
Exactly. We need to understand the historical and conceptual foundation of, breaking limits.
Right. So to set that paradigm, we need to look at a really compelling narrative shared in the foreword of our source material, which was written by Gregg Braden.
Yeah, it beautifully illustrates the dilemma of human belief and the physical boundaries we just accept as absolute truth.
I really love this story.
Okay.
So Braden recounts this incredible journey he took back in, I think it was the spring in 1998.
Yeah, 1998.
Right. He leads a group pilgrimage into the extremely remote highlands of western Tibet. Just picture this. They're hiking up to an elevation of more than 15,000 feet above sea level.
That's no joke.
It is grueling. The humidity is in the single digits, the air is incredibly thin, the terrain is treacherous, and they are navigating this harsh landscape to visit a very specific, isolated cave.
Right, the dwelling of an 11th century poet, mystic, and highly revered yogi named Milarepa.
Exactly.
And Milarepa's biography is essentially a masterclass in extreme psychological and spiritual transformation. He was born into a privileged family, but lost absolutely everything to mass violence and betrayal. He initially sought revenge, studying dark arts, and suffered immense karmic and psychological torment.
Yeah, he went through it.
He really did. But eventually, to purify himself, he retreated high into the Himalayan mountains to dedicate his entire existence to discovering his extraordinary potential as a yogi.
But what Braden and his group went to see wasn't just a historic site, right? It wasn't just a monument to a dedicated monk.
No, they went to witness physical evidence of an event that entirely defies modern physics.
Yes. So Braden is standing there inside this dim cave. His face is inches from the rock wall, and he is looking at a perfect impression of a human hand embedded directly into the solid stone.
Just wow.
According to the historical account, 8 centuries ago, Milarepa stood before his students in this very cave. He placed his open hand against the rock face, and he just kept pushing.
As if the stone simply didn't exist.
Right. The rock beneath his palms reportedly became soft and malleable, giving way to the pressure of his hand.
And we should definitely note, this wasn't an isolated anomaly or some trick of the light.
No.
Braden scanned the walls and ceiling of the cave with his flashlight and saw multiple hand impressions. He actually opened his own palm and pushed it into one of the impressions, feeling his fingers cradle perfectly into the form left by the yogi 800 years prior.
That gives me chills.
Right. The physical reality of the rock had been fundamentally altered.
Just imagine standing there as a rational, modern human being. You are touching solid rock, but it holds the exact imprint of a human hand. Naturally, Braden turns to his Tibetan guide and asks the obvious question.
How is this possible?
Yeah. How do you defy the physical laws that unequivocally state a human hand and a solid rock cannot occupy the same space?
And the guide's answer is really the crux of this entire deep dive. He told Braden that the great teacher's meditation taught him that he was part of the rock, not separate from it. To Milarepa, the cave wasn't a physical barrier confining him, it was simply a place of experience. Because he believed himself to be intimately connected to the molecular structure of his environment, the rock could not contain him.
It's a beautiful concept, but let's ground it in a slightly more modern analogy.
Okay.
It reminds me of the 4-minute mile effect in athletics.
Oh, perfect example.
Right. For decades, the entire world, including top doctors, physiologists, scientists, they all believed that a human being could not physically run a mile in under 4 minutes.
They literally thought the human heart would explode under that level of cardiovascular stress.
Exactly. It was a solid rock wall in the collective human consciousness. But then in 1954, Roger Bannister did it. He ran it in 3 minutes and 59.4 seconds.
And what happened?
Within weeks, someone else broke it. And dozens of people. Today, high schoolers do it.
Yeah.
The physical human body didn't suddenly evolve in 1954. The psychological barrier broke. Once someone proves the impossible is possible, the belief system shatters for everyone else.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the dilemma we face today is identical to the dilemma faced by Milarepa's students and identical to the runners before Roger Bannister.
Yeah.
We view the world through a lens of rigid boundaries. We are conditioned by our society, our families, our prevailing scientific models to think in terms of strict limits. We believe our genes are a destiny. We believe our diseases are permanent. We believe our personalities are fixed.
Right, the solid rock wall.
Exactly. But once we have a direct experience of greater potential, whether we witness it like Milarepa's students or experience it ourselves, our biology actually frees us to embrace that potential in our own lives. The external evidence rewires our internal circuitry.
So I want you, listening right now, to think about this in your own life. What solid rock walls do you accept as absolute, unchangeable truth? What are the physical, emotional, or financial limitations you haven't even thought to question because they just seem like, well, reality?
It is a really profound question to sit with and to truly understand how powerful our thoughts and beliefs are at creating our reality, and specifically at healing our physical bodies. We first have to look at the darker side of the equation.
We do.
We have to understand the exact biological mechanics of how powerfully our thoughts can destroy our biology. We have to look at the downward spiral of stress.
Yeah, this is where the source material takes a very intense, deeply human turn. We are introduced to a real-life case study from the text. Her name is Anna Willems, a psychotherapist working as a manager and board member for a major psychiatric institution in Amsterdam.
It's important context to note that Anna was highly successful, deeply rational, and fully embedded in the traditional medical and psychological models.
Right.
The institution she managed generated over 10 million euros annually. She was not someone prone to magical thinking or alternative lifestyle. She was a very pragmatic, educated professional.
We meet Anna on what seems like a picture-perfect Sunday afternoon in June 2007. The text paints this vivid scene like the French doors are open, the curtains are blowing in the breeze, her 12-year-old son is reading on the sofa, her 11-year-old daughter is singing upstairs.
Sounds idyllic.
Anna is relaxing in a red-lettered chair, reading a medical journal. It is an idyllic domestic moment. But there's this current of anxiety. Her husband had left the house early that morning without saying where he was going. She'd tried calling his cell phone repeatedly with no answer.
And then at 3:30 in the afternoon, the doorbell rings.
Yeah.
It's 2 police officers. They ask to come inside, settle down, and then they deliver the news that instantly and irrevocably shatters her reality. Earlier that morning, her husband had jumped off one of the tallest buildings in the center of the city. He had committed suicide.
It's just unimaginable. The text describes the immediate visceral shock. Anna's breath momentarily stops. She starts shaking uncontrollably. Her children are paralyzed in shock. And physically, Anna feels an intense stabbing pain shoot through her head and a hollow, sinking ache in her gut. Her neck and shoulders stiffen instantly into rigid blocks.
Let's stop and break down exactly what is happening inside Anna's body in that precise fraction of a second, because this cascade is critical to everything that follows.
Okay, let's do it.
When we perceive a highly stressful circumstance, especially a catastrophic shock that threatens our survival or our reality, and one where we have absolutely no control over the outcome, our brain activates a primitive defense mechanism called the sympathetic nervous system.
This is the classic fight or flight response.
It is, but let's look at the actual mechanics of it. The amygdala, which is the brain's alarm bell, sends a distress signal to the hypothalamus. The hypothalamus communicates with the rest of the body through the autonomic nervous system. It signals the adrenal glands, which sit right on top of your kidneys, to pump epinephrine adrenaline into the bloodstream.
So it's an instant chemical flood.
An absolute flood. The body mobilizes a monumental amount of energy in milliseconds. Pupils dilate to let in more light so you can spot a threat. The heart rate and respiratory rate skyrocket to pump oxygen to your muscles so you can run or fight.
Right, you're preparing for physical action.
Exactly. Glucose is dumped from the liver into the bloodstream to give your cells instant, explosive energy.
And crucially, the body starts shutting down long-term building projects. Like, if you were running from a tiger, your body doesn't care about digesting your breakfast.
Not at all.
And it certainly doesn't care about sending white blood cells to fight off a minor cold. It needs all available energy routed to your extremities.
Precisely. Blood flow is literally shunted away from your internal organs, your digestive tract, your immune system, your higher brain centers, and pushed out to your arms and legs. Circulation moves out of the rational, creative forebrain and into the hindbrain. You lose the capacity to think creatively, to learn, or to problem solve. You are entirely reliant on primal instinct and instant conditioned reaction.
Which makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint.
Yeah, biologically speaking, this response is highly adaptive and brilliant for short-term bursts. If a predator chases you in the wild, the stressful event is over in a few minutes. You either escape or you don't.
Grim but true.
If you survive, your body naturally downregulates. The parasympathetic nervous system kicks in, and you return to homeostasis or balance within a few hours. The immune system turns back on, digestion resumes.
But here's the fatal flaw in human biology. Anna wasn't running from a physical tiger. The threat wasn't a predator that eventually went away. The threat was a permanent alteration of her reality.
And because human beings have such massively developed complex neocortexes, we are capable of something that animals in the wild are not.
What's up with that?
We can turn on the exact same cascade of stress chemicals by thought alone. We can sit in a perfectly safe room and think about our problems, relive past traumatic events, or obsessively forecast worst-case future scenarios, and our bodies react as if the threat is physically present in the room with us.
Wait, time out. I want to make sure I'm fully grasping the severity of this. You're telling me that just the act of remembering, just sitting in a chair and thinking about a stressful event, creates the exact same toxic chemical cascade, the same adrenaline and cortisol dump, as actually living through the tragedy in real time.
Yes.
How does an intangible thought turn into a tangible physical disease?
It brings up a fascinating distinction, and it's really the core of what the source material calls the thinking-feeling loop.
Okay, the thinking-feeling loop.
Let's look at the mechanics. Thoughts are the vocabulary of the brain. Feelings are the vocabulary of the body. When a profoundly traumatic event occurs, a massive amount of sensory information rushes into the brain and is recorded neurologically.
Okay, so the brain logs the data.
Right. The brain then produces a chemical residue from that experience, which we consciously experience as an emotion. The evolutionary purpose of this is that we remember events better when we remember how they feel, so we can avoid that danger in the future.
Oh, I see. So the stronger the emotional chemical rush, the deeper the neurological wiring of the memory.
Yes, exactly. The emotional chemical residue essentially brands the brain neurologically. A holographic image is frozen in the neural architecture. Now, for Anna, every single day after the suicide, she relived the event.
Because how could she not?
Right. Her mind frantically spun with unanswerable questions. How will I take care of the kids? Why didn't he leave a note? What a coward for leaving us in financial ruin. She was completely consumed by feelings of grief, profound anger, despair, and victimization.
And her body, being the objective biological machine that it is, didn't know the difference between the memory she was vividly running in her mind and the actual event happening in the external world.
No, it literally has no idea. Her body was experiencing the same devastating chemical cocktail of adrenaline and cortisol dozens, if not hundreds of times a day.
Wow.
By repeatedly recalling the experience, she was anchoring her brain and body to the past. Because she couldn't think greater than how she felt, and her feelings were an exact chemical record of a past tragedy, her entire state of being became biologically stuck in the past.
And the physical toll of this loop is just devastating. The text outlines this horrifying downward spiral. First, she loses her ability to work. She can't concentrate. Then she discovers her husband left them with massive, hidden financial debts, adding a layer of survival panic.
It just compounds.
It really does. She's spiraling emotionally. And then 9 months after the suicide, she wakes up and realizes she is paralyzed from the waist down.
Yeah. The doctors diagnose her with neuritis, which is a severe inflammation of the peripheral nervous system.
But they couldn't find a structural cause,
Yeah,
right?
right. No slip disc, no spinal trauma. It was an autoimmune condition. Let's think back to the fight or flight response. Because Anna was constantly in survival mode, her immune system was constantly being told to shut down, to save energy for running away.
So just stop defending her.
Worse than that, when you suppress the immune system with chronic stress hormones for months on end, it gets confused. It loses its internal compass. It essentially turned on itself.
Oh!
Her white blood cells began attacking the nervous system in her lower spine, breaking down the myelin sheath, the protective coating of the nerves, short-circuiting her ability to move her legs.
So her body literally couldn't move forward because she was emotionally, chemically, and biologically trapped in her past.
Literally.
And it gets worse.
Huh.
To treat the paralysis, she's pumped full of massive doses of intravenous corticosteroids.
Yeah, which are designed to suppress the immune system even further to stop the inflammation.
But because her immune system is now practically non-existent, she develops aggressive systemic bacterial infections.
Yeah.
Then she develops a condition called erosive lichen planus.
Painful.
Incredibly painful. These are massive ulcerations in the mucous membranes of her mouth and esophagus. She can't eat solid foods. Her salivary glands stop producing saliva. She's dealing with massive physical pain, toxic chemical stress from the drugs, and unresolved emotional stress all simultaneously.
What we are observing here is a total physiological collapse. Long-term chronic stress pushes the genetic buttons that create disease.
Because the body just can't handle it.
It's a fundamental law of biology. A system cannot simultaneously be in a state of emergency and a state of growth and repair. Because the fight or flight system was switched on and stayed on for years, her body had absolutely zero energy left in its inner environment to heal tissues, fight off rogue cells, or maintain basic homeostasis.
And the final blow comes in 2011. 4 years after the suicide, she is diagnosed with a highly aggressive esophageal cancer.
Yeah.
Think about this trajectory. From a perfectly healthy, successful, vibrant woman to suffering paralysis, severe autoimmune disease, massive infections, and terminal cancer in just 4 years. All triggered by an emotional trauma that her biology couldn't process and release.
It illustrates a terrifying reality about human biology. Over time, people can actually become chemically addicted to the very emotions of stress that are making them sick.
Addicted to stress.
Yes. The rush of stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol, provides a sudden burst of arousal or rush of energy. It makes us feel hyper alive, even if that feeling is miserable.
Wow, so we seek it out.
Unconsciously, yes. People begin to use the conditions in their lives, their toxic relationships, their bad jobs, their financial problems, their tragedies, to reaffirm their addiction to those emotions, just to feel that heightened state of arousal. Anna was emotionally addicted to a life she hated, and her body was paying the ultimate price.
It's like having a fully stocked pharmacy inside your body, but someone has hacked the operating system and programmed it to dispense poison every time you have a familiar thought.
That's a great way to put it.
Now, Anna's story is an extreme, tragic example, obviously. But the source material makes a really compelling point here, and I want to pivot to how this affects the rest of us.
Right.
Because the text argues that Anna's story is just an amplified version of what everyday people do when they run on autopilot, which forces us to look at the science of the rut, how the daily routines we barely notice actually hardwire our brains and dictate our physical reality.
To understand the mechanics of the rut, we need to dive into neuroplasticity. The fundamental rule of neuroscience here is Heb's law. Neurons that fire together, wire together. And conversely, neurons that no longer fire together, wire apart.
Okay, let's look at the mechanics of this in a normal, non-tragic daily routine. Walk us through how the average person's brain behaves from the moment they wake up.
Okay, imagine the average person waking up. The very first thing they do, often before they even open their eyes, is search their memory for the familiar feeling of themselves. They remember who they are by remembering their problems. Oh, right, my back hurts. I have that meeting with my boss I'm dreading. I need to pay the mortgage. Instantly, they're feeling the emotions of the past.
Setting the baseline for the day.
Exactly. Then they reach for their phone. They check the same apps, Facebook, Instagram, the news, looking for external stimuli to validate their internal state. They get out of bed on the same side, go to the bathroom, brush their teeth with the same hand, take a shower standing in the exact same spot, walk the same route to the kitchen, drink out of the same favorite coffee mug. They get in their car and drive the exact same route to work.
They see the same coworkers, do the same repetitive tasks, react with the exact same predictable frustrations when their boss sends that specific type of annoying email.
Yep.
Then they drive the same route home, watch the same 2 hours of television, and go to bed at the same time.
Yes. And if you keep firing those same neural circuits over and over again, day after day, year after year, they become hardwired into a robust, unconscious program.
Like a groove in a record.
Exactly like that. A habit is essentially a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions acquired through frequent repetition. Through sheer repetition, you've programmed your brain to execute these sequences effortlessly. The basal ganglia takes over, and it requires almost no conscious thought.
Right.
Over time, your body literally learns how to do these things better than your conscious mind.
The body becomes the mind. That is a wild concept. It's like having 50 tabs open on your internet browser, all running heavy background macros, downloading files, playing videos. You have absolutely no RAM, no processing power left to open a new program, or in this case, to create a new destiny. You are running entirely on cached memory.
That's a brilliant analogy. When your body is on autopilot, dragging you into the same predictable future based on what you've repeatedly done in the same familial past, you've effectively lost your free will to a biological program. Your yesterday is actively mathematically creating your tomorrow. You are living in a closed loop.
And the source material highlights this crucial concept. Where you place your attention is where you place your energy. This isn't some mystical woo-woo idea. It's a statement about neurological and metabolic resources.
Right.
If you are constantly placing your attention on the same familiar people, problems, and objects in your outer environment, what is actually happening energetically?
You are siphoning your creative energy out of the present moment. You are scattering it into a known past or a highly predictable future. Let's look at how this works. Every person, object, or place in your familiar reality has a specific neurological network assigned to it in your brain because you've experienced it repeatedly.
Okay.
And crucially, it has an emotional component permanently connected to it.
So when you think about your boss, you automatically feel resentment.
Exactly.
The neurons fire, and the neuropeptides associated with resentment flood your bloodstream. When you think about your ex, you feel anger. When you think about your bank account, you feel anxiety. Your actual physical life force, your metabolic energy, is literally bound to these external things.
This raises an intensely important question for you, the listener. How much of your vital creative energy is currently tied up in maintaining your own suffering?
Wow.
If your energy is completely commingled with all these known stressful experiences in your outer world, you have very little biological energy left to create an unknown experience, to heal a disease, or to shift to a new timeline. You are using your outer world to reaffirm your emotional addictions.
Man, that hits hard.
Yeah.
Using your outer world to reaffirm your emotional addictions. But this is where our deep dive takes a massive, hopeful pivot.
Thankfully.
Because if we follow the logic, if our thoughts and repetitive emotions can hardwire us into a miserable past and literally create tumors and paralysis, logic dictates that this exact same biological machinery can be used in reverse.
Yeah.
It can prime our biology for a brand new future.
Precisely. The machinery is neutral. It just runs the code you give it. And the scientific data backing this up is staggering. To understand how we rewrite the code, let's look at the power of mental rehearsal.
Yes. Let's talk about the Harvard piano study. I love this because it sounds completely fabricated, but it's peer-reviewed neuroscience.
It's amazing.
Researchers took a group of volunteers who had never played the piano in their lives and split them into two groups. Group A physically practiced a simple 5-finger piano exercise for 2 hours a day over 5 consecutive days.
Okay.
Group B did the exact same exercise for the exact same amount of time, but they only imagined practicing it. They sat in a chair, closed their eyes, and mentally rehearsed the finger movements. They never moved a single physical finger.
And the results challenge our fundamental understanding of experience. The before and after functional MRI brain scans showed that both groups created a dramatic number of new neural circuits in the exact same region of the brain, the supplementary motor area, which controls finger movements.
Wow.
The brains of the people who merely mentally rehearsed the actions looked exactly as though the physical experience had already happened. The act of concentrated thought literally built physical neural architecture.
Wait, let me make sure I'm picturing this right. You're telling me thinking about a piano physically wires the brain as if you played it?
Yes.
Come on. If you sat the imaginary players in front of a real piano after 5 days, could they play the song?
Yes. Many of them could actually play the exercise because their brains had already been primed with the hardware to execute the movement. And it goes beyond just brain circuits. It translates to actual physical muscle mass. There were incredible studies done by the Cleveland Clinic and Ohio University that mapped this out.
Let's get into the mechanics of those because this blew my mind. In the Cleveland Clinic study, researchers took subjects and had them imagine flexing their biceps as hard as they could.
Right.
They did this for 15-minute sessions, 5 days a week, for 12 weeks. They split them into 2 visualization groups. One group used external imagery, like watching a mental movie of themselves lifting weights from the outside.
Like a third-person perspective.
Exactly. The other group used internal imagery, imagining their bodies in real time doing the exercise, feeling the burn, feeling the kinetic resistance.
And the distinction between external and internal imagery is crucial here. The group using internal real-time imagery, where they were emotionally and physically immersed in the mental act, saw a 10.8% increase in actual physical muscle strength.
10.8%.
The muscle fibers literally thickened without lifting a single physical weight. And the Ohio University study pushed this even further. They took healthy volunteers and wrapped their wrists in rigid surgical casts for a full month so they absolutely could not move their hands.
Okay.
Half the group imagined flexing their immobilized wrists for 11 minutes a day, intensely focusing on the sensation. When the casts came off, the muscles of the group that used mental imagery were twice as strong as the control group who did nothing.
So mechanically, what is happening there? How does a thought make a bicep stronger?
When you mentally rehearse an action with intense focus, the supplementary motor area of the brain activates, just as it did in the piano study. This area sends signals down the spinal cord to the lower motor neurons, which connect directly to the muscle fibers.
So the body is receiving the command.
Exactly. Even though you aren't moving, you are firing the exact neurological pathways required for movement. The body responds to these electrical signals by reinforcing the neuromuscular junctions and increasing the recruitment of motor units.
That's incredible.
What these studies definitively prove is that mental rehearsal not only changes the brain, but it changes the physical body by thought alone. When you are fully engaged and focused, taking your attention off the external environment, the brain and body do not know the difference between what is occurring in the outer world and what is happening in your inner world of imagination.
Here's where it gets really interesting. If you combine a clear intention with an elevated emotion, you can force the brain and body to look like a physical experience has already happened ahead of time. You are biologically experiencing the future before it happens. Which brings us back to the miraculous healing of Anna.
Yes. Let's look at how Anna applied this exact science to her terminal cancer. Anna hit absolute rock bottom. She had a severe mental breakdown after her first chemotherapy session for her esophageal cancer. She collapsed on the floor, crying uncontrollably, realizing with stark clarity that she was going to leave her young children orphaned.
Heartbreaking.
But in that moment of utter despair and total surrender, something shifted. She made a firm, unequivocal intention to change herself and her life. She realized she had to stop outsourcing her healing. She literally stopped going to her doctors. She completely stopped the chemotherapy and the drug treatments.
Which, to be absolutely clear to our listeners, we are not advising anyone to do. We are simply objectively reporting the events detailed in the source material. It was a massive, terrifying risk. Her family doctor even called her and told her she was being dangerously naive, stupid, and that she would die very soon without medical intervention. But Anna had attended one of Dr. Dispenza's workshops and had this profound philosophical realization. Basically, like, if I created the life I have now, including my paralysis and my cancer, through my own strechinal thoughts and emotional addictions, maybe I can uncreate everything with the exact same passion I created it with.
She committed her life to doing the inner work. She started meditating deeply twice a day, despite her intense physical pain, her overwhelming fears, and her massive financial burdens. She used a specific meditation practice called the blessing of the energy centers to reprogram her autonomic nervous system.
I want to stop and look at the actual biology here. What does blessing the energy centers actually mean? Sounds a bit esoteric.
It does sound a bit out there, but let's translate it into biology. The body has several major energy centers. Ancient traditions call them chakras, but biologically, these correspond exactly to the body's major nerve plexuses and endocrine glands. The thyroid, the thymus, the adrenal glands, the pituitary gland, these glands regulate all the hormones in the body. By resting her attention on these specific areas of the body and changing her brainwaves, Anna was directing blood flow and vital energy to these glands, bringing the autonomic nervous system back into balance.
She was basically manually overriding the operating system.
Exactly. She also did walking meditations where she would literally stand up, eyes open, and walk through her house as her future healed self. She embodied the posture, the breathing, and the emotional state of a healthy woman.
But the pivotal moment, the real quantum leap, came during a 4-day progressive workshop in New York. On the 3rd day, during a deep, extended meditation, she completely surrendered. She moved beyond the memory of who she was.
Yeah.
She disconnected her attention from her sick body, her pain, her physical environment, and the concept of linear time. And in this state of pure, formless consciousness, she received a vivid vision.
She saw herself in a brand new timeline, a brand new future. She was standing on a huge, brilliantly lit stage, holding a microphone, speaking to a massive crowd. She was telling them the story of how she healed herself. But here is the critical key. She didn't just see it like a movie on a screen. She felt it in every cell of her body.
The internal imagery, like the muscle study.
Yes. She felt a burst of intense, overwhelming joy, immense gratitude, and total relief. She literally burst into uncontrollable laughter during the meditation.
This is the vital formula the book hammers home over and over. A clear intention combined with an elevated emotion. She didn't just visualize a picture. She taught her body chemically and emotionally what the future would feel like, completely bypassing the analytical mind.
Right.
Because the feeling of gratitude is the ultimate state of receivership. When you feel gratitude, your body believes the event has already happened. Her body believes she was already healed right then and there.
And the physical results are staggering. A year and a half later, in September 2013, her doctors gave her a thorough medical checkup. The cancer was completely gone. The tumor in her esophagus had simply vanished. There were 0 cancer markers in her blood. The severe ulcerations in her esophagus and mucous membranes were completely healed. She regained full mobility.
That is just wow.
And a few months later, she was standing on a stage in Barcelona, Spain, holding a microphone, telling an audience the exact story of her healing. It happened identically to how she saw it in the meditation.
Okay, so she changed her brain circuits through mental rehearsal. I get that part. But cancer is a physical cellular mutation. How does a newly wired brain actually reach down and rewrite mutated DNA? Erasing a physical tumor through emotion is a massive leap.
It is a leap. To cross that bridge, we have to transition away from neurology and look at the complex world of genetics. We need to talk about epigenetics.
Let's unpack this. For decades, the prevailing scientific dogma was that DNA was destiny. The thought was that if your parents had heart disease, you'd probably get heart disease. If your family had a history of breast cancer, you were a ticking time bomb. The genes were the blueprint, and you were stuck with the exact house they built.
That was the old genetic determinism model, and it is largely outdated. Epigenetics literally translates to above the gene. Science now knows that genes do not independently create disease.
Okay.
The environment signals the gene to create disease. And crucially, the environment isn't just the external world, like breathing polluted air or eating a terrible diet. The most important environment is the internal environment directly outside the cell membrane. And what creates that internal environment? Your emotional chemistry.
So let's break down the cellular mechanics. If you are living in chronic stress, like Anna was, your cells are constantly bathing in a soup of cortisol and adrenaline. What does that actually do to the DNA?
Let's visualize the cell. The cell membrane has thousands of specific receptors on the outside, like intricate keyholes. When you have a thought, your brain creates a neuropeptide, a chemical messenger. That neuropeptide travels through the bloodstream, finds the specific receptor on the cell, and clicks into it like a key. If it's a stress peptide, it sends an alarm signal through the cell membrane into the nucleus directly to the DNA.
So it's sounding an alarm deep inside the cell.
Exactly. The DNA is normally stooled up tightly. But this chemical signal causes a specific section of the DNA to unspool. The cell then reads that section of DNA and creates an RNA copy, which travels out to the ribosome to build a protein.
Because proteins are the building blocks of life. They dictate the structure and function of the body.
Exactly. When the cell is bathed in stress chemicals, it downregulates or turns off the healthy genes responsible for growth and repair, and it upregulates the genes that create inflammation, tissue breakdown, and disease.
Makes sense.
But if you change your internal environment by feeling elevated emotions like joy, love, deep gratitude, your brain produces different neuropeptides like oxytocin or dopamine. These bind to the cell receptors and send a completely new signal to the DNA.
So the gene itself, the underlying code, doesn't physically change. You don't get new DNA. The expression of the gene changes.
Right.
It's like having a massive keyboard, but playing a completely different chord. Anna was embodying the powerful, elevated emotions of her future life. She was sending new, healthy chemical signals to her cells, instructing her genes to unspool different sections of DNA, making completely different proteins, which physically restructured her body for health and eradicated the mutated cancer cells.
And the source material provides some incredibly rigorous, mind-blowing concrete data on this epigenetic process. In 2016, Dr. Dispenza's team of researchers conducted a major study at an advanced workshop in Tacoma, Washington. They took 117 subjects and measured a specific protein marker in their saliva called salivary immunoglobulin A, or IgA.
Let's pause and explain IgA because this is fascinating. What does it actually do?
IgA is essentially the primary internal defense system in the human body. It is an incredibly powerful protein, an antibody that constantly patrols the mucosal linings of your body, your respiratory tract, your digestive tract fighting off bacteria, viruses, and fungi. It's your biological frontline infantry.
Good to have on your side.
Definitely. When stress levels go up and cortisol floods the system, the gene that makes IgA is heavily downregulated. The immune system is told to stand down. The normal, healthy baseline range for IgA is between 37 and 87 milligrams per deciliter.
So the researchers had these subjects undergo a specific intervention. They asked them to move into elevated emotional states, feeling genuine, heartfelt joy, profound love, and deep gratitude for just 9 to 10 minutes, 3 times a day over the course of 4 days.
That's it?
30 minutes of gratitude a day. And the result? Average IgA levels across the board shot up by an astonishing 49.5%. Some subjects' levels passed 100 milligrams per deciliter, well beyond the normal high range.
It's remarkable data. By intentionally attaining and sustaining states of elevated emotion for just a few days, their bodies began to chemically believe they were in a new, profoundly safe environment.
They felt safe.
Reducing the survival emotions downregulated the genes for stress hormones, while the sustained elevated emotions upregulated the genes responsible for immune defense, cellular repair, and longevity.
Think about the last time you bought a $40 bottle of immune-boosting supplements or a bunch of vitamin C powders because everyone at your office was sick.
Yeah, we've all done it.
The data here suggests that simply sitting in a quiet room, cultivating a state of genuine gratitude for 10 minutes a day is functionally more powerful at boosting your primary immune defense than practically any supplement. No exogenous substances, no immune-boosting drugs. The pharmacy is entirely internal.
But, and this is a massive but, to achieve these epigenetic changes, you have to be able to get out of your own way. You cannot do this if your brain is racing with stressful thoughts. You have to stop the constant stream of survival thinking. And that requires fundamentally changing your brainwaves to enter what the author calls the eternal present moment.
Right, because if you're constantly worrying about answering your emails or replaying an argument you had yesterday, you aren't in the present moment. You can't heal your body if your brain is in the past.
Exactly.
Let's break down the mechanics of these brain waves because this is the actual practical application of how you achieve these states.
Let's look at the spectrum. Most of the time when we are awake, conscious, and interacting with the world, our brain is operating in beta brainwaves. But beta has 3 distinct tiers. Low-range beta is relaxed, focused attention like when you're deeply engrossed in reading a good book.
Okay.
Mid-range beta is moderate, adaptive, stress like meeting someone new and trying to remember their name or navigating a slightly tricky traffic situation.
But then there's high-range beta. This is the danger zone. This is survival mode. This is when you are jacked up on stress hormones, experiencing anger, alarm, agitation, anxiety, or deep fear.
Yes.
In high-range beta, your brainwaves are incredibly erratic, firing completely out of sync. Different compartments of the brain are not communicating. It's like a chaotic lightning storm in your head.
Exactly. And you cannot heal, create, or rewire your brain in high-range beta. To get to the body's operating system where you can actually make epigenetic changes, you have to slow the machinery down. When you close your eyes and focus inward, shutting out external sensory data, you shift into alpha brainwaves.
Alpha.
In alpha, you are relaxed, highly imaginative, and you stop overanalyzing. The brain waves become coherent and synchronized.
And as you practice meditation and go deeper, you cross the threshold into theta. Theta is that twilight stage, right on the edge between wakefulness and sleep. The body is asleep, but the mind is awake. This is the realm of deep meditation and the gateway to the subconscious.
Below theta is delta, which is typically the state of deep, restorative, dreamless sleep. But highly advanced meditators can actually remain fully conscious while their physical bodies enter delta. And finally, on the opposite end of the spectrum, there's gamma.
Gamma.
Gamma is a superconscious state. The brain is highly aroused, emitting massive amounts of energy, but it's not aroused by an external threat like a tiger. It is aroused by an internal, profoundly mystical event.
But let's be honest, getting to theta or gamma is a massive struggle.
Yeah.
The text describes exactly what happens when the average person tries to do this. You sit down to meditate, you close your eyes, and your body behaves exactly like a heroin addict throwing a severe withdrawal tantrum.
It really does.
Suddenly your body says, hey, we usually feel angry at 8 a.m.
Yeah.
Think about the guy who cut you off in traffic. Or, my nose itches, my back hurts, I need coffee, I have to check my email.
Because the body wants to experience physical reality with its senses to get its familiar chemical fix. It is literally craving the hormones of stress. It is rebelling against the stillness.
It's like training a wild dog to sit. Every single time your mind wanders to a stressful future scenario or drifts to a bitter memory of the past, and you catch it, and you force your attention back to the present moment, you are executing a biological override. You are telling the body that you, the consciousness, are the mind.
Yeah.
The body is no longer the mind. With every repetition, you are physically breaking the energetic bonds to your past.
And when you finally break through that resistance, when you master the eternal present moment and strip away your identity, your name, your problems, and your body, you open the door to the truly mystical.
The truly mystical stuff.
The source material shares some profoundly personal, intense experiences from the author to illustrate what is possible when we leave the Newtonian realm of three-dimensional space-time and enter the quantum realm of time-space.
Yeah, we have to talk about these experiences because they push the boundaries of everything we've discussed. Dr. Dispenza describes a specific night in his living room in the Pacific Northwest. He's totally relaxed, lingering perfectly in that theta state between wakefulness and sleep, keeping his focus open. He places his attention entirely on the physical space that his pineal gland occupies in the center of his brain.
Let's unpack the biology of the pineal gland because it's not just a metaphorical third eye, it's a highly complex biochemical transducer.
Okay, transducer.
The pineal gland is a tiny pine cone-shaped gland located deep in the center of the brain. Inside the gland are microscopic, highly conductive calcite crystals. When you enter deep, coherent brainwave states, the rhythmic pumping of cerebrospinal fluid puts mechanical pressure on these crystals.
So physical pressure.
Yes, this mechanical stress creates an electrical charge, a phenomenon known in physics as the piezoelectric effect.
So the gland literally becomes electrically charged.
Exactly. It acts as an incredibly sensitive cosmic antenna. When it's activated, it can transduce quantum electromagnetic frequencies information from beyond our visible light spectrum and translate them into profound neurochemistry.
Wow.
It upgrades ordinary neurotransmitters like serotonin and melatonin into incredibly powerful psychedelic metabolites like phenylalanine and naturally occurring DMT. This creates vivid, lucid, multidimensional inner imagery that feels more real than physical reality.
And this is exactly what happens in his living room. He's focusing on the gland and he sees this vivid 3D inner image of his pineal gland releasing a thick, milky substance. And then a massive, old-fashioned pocket watch appears right in front of him in his mind's eye.
Sounds surreal.
It really is. And he receives this profound, immediate download of pure information. The realization that linear time, the concept of past, present, and future happening in a straight line, isn't how the universe actually works. Everything is happening simultaneously in an eternal present moment. All possible realities, all timelines, exist simultaneously as a quantum scaffolding, stretching out into infinity.
And then the experience becomes deeply interactive. The hands on the visionary watch move backward. Instantly, he is experiencing two realities simultaneously.
And at the same time.
Yeah. He is himself lying on the couch in the present, but he is also fully his 7-year-old self, lying in bed with a dangerously high fever. He's physically experiencing the heat, the sheets, the delirium of the child.
Wow.
And looking at his younger self, he feels this immense, overwhelming love. He realizes in that moment that the love he is feeling now as an adult is actually the energetic force that was comforting and drawing that sick young boy toward his future.
Whoa, time out. I'm with you on lowering cortisol to heal cancer. The data supports that. But now we're talking about physically experiencing the past and future simultaneously. How are we bridging the gap between biology and quantum time travel?
It challenges our fundamental framework of reality. In Newtonian physics, we live in space-time, 3 dimensions of space and 1 linear dimension of time. You move through space, and time takes time.
Right.
But in the quantum model, which the source material relies on heavily, there is time-space. In the quantum field, time is the eternal present, and space is infinite. When you strip away your brain's connection to your physical body and environment, and your brain waves synchronize into gamma, the theory is that your consciousness can tune in to different frequencies of reality, much like a radio tuning into a different station that's already broadcasting in the room.
So it's like changing the channel.
Exactly. You aren't physically traveling, your consciousness is accessing different coordinates in the quantum field.
And the vision continues. The watch moves forward. He's suddenly standing barefoot in his snowy backyard in Washington. But it's not the present. It's a future, highly evolved version of himself. He feels superconscious. Every physical sense is amplified 100 times over. He doesn't feel the freezing cold of the snow. He just feels intense, vibrating energy and an electrifying, pure form of love for life. He sees a luminous, tiny woman who sends him an energy of love he's never felt before. And then he turns, looks through the window of his house, and sees his present-day self standing at the sink, washing dishes.
It's a staggering realization. He understands experientially that there are infinite possible versions of himself, infinite timelines existing right now in the eternal present.
Yeah.
But the most visceral, painful, and ultimately challenging mystical experience he shares happened later, during an early morning meditation in a hotel room.
Oh man, the Greco-Roman vision. This is intense. He fully surrenders in his meditation, moving past the physical environment, and suddenly he drops into another reality. He is a stout, muscular man with thick, curly hair, living in a hot, rocky, arid terrain. It feels like ancient Greece or Turkey. He's a philosopher on a pilgrimage, and he is passionately teaching a message of spiritual freedom and personal empowerment, a message that the local government absolutely hates.
Because teaching people they have internal power threatens external authority. In the vision, he is ambushed and arrested. He is dragged to a bustling public square, stripped, and strapped to a massive horizontal stone slab with heavy ropes and metal cuffs.
Like a medieval torture device.
Exactly. A magistrate stands over him and demands he recants his teachings and stop speaking to the crowds. He refuses. The magistrate signals the guards, and the slab is cranked vertically. It stretches and dislocates his shoulders and hips. The pain he experiences in the meditation is blinding, physically agonizing.
And as the observer of this vision, he looks past the magistrate, and he looks at the man operating the crank of the torture device, and he recognizes him. He looks deeply into the tormentor's eyes and realizes it's the soul of someone from his current life, someone who has been causing him immense professional and personal trouble. And suddenly, the karmic loop all makes sense.
The young philosopher's back finally snaps. He breaks physically and spiritually. He is released, but he retreats to a dark cave by the sea and lives out the rest of his life in deep shame, hiding, and complete silence as a hermit. When Dispenza finally comes out of this intense theta state and returns to his hotel room, he is physically weeping.
That's rough.
He realizes it wasn't just an arbitrary hallucination, it was a profound, targeted message from the quantum field.
He realized that in his present life, he was facing massive adversity and criticism for his work. And his unconscious reaction was to hide, to shrink back, to avoid the conflict, exactly like the philosopher who retreated to the cave.
Right, the pattern.
The vision was a warning. You are repeating the energetic pattern. He realized he couldn't hide from the world in his present life. He couldn't retract from adversity. He had to stand up, face the criticism, and boldly speak the truth.
If we connect this back to the biology and physics we've discussed today, the philosophical takeaway is massive. We are not merely linear biological machines living a brief linear life. We are dimensional beings of consciousness operating a biological vehicle.
It's deep.
The only way to change these infinite possible futures or to heal the deeply embedded traumas of our past is to radically change our energy and our biology right now, in the infinite present. You cannot heal the past by staying in the past.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We have journeyed a long way today. We started at the literal solid rock walls of Milarepa's cave, realizing that our belief systems dictate our physical reality. We walked through the terrifying, destructive biological cascade of chronic stress that ravaged Anna's body, turning thoughts into tumors.
We really covered some ground.
We decoded the science of neuroplasticity, showing how our daily repetitive habits lock us into a predictable, unfulfilling future. We saw the incredible, empowering proof of mental rehearsal and epigenetics, how 30 minutes of elevated emotion can physically alter your genetic expression and practically double your immune system's strength.
Yeah.
And we peeked behind the veil of space and time through the mystical biochemical gateway of the pineal gland.
What this ultimately means is that you literally have the pharmacy, the software code, and the architect's blueprints all sitting latent inside your cells right now.
Wow.
You are not a victim of your genetics or your circumstances.
No.
You are constantly broadcasting an electromagnetic signature based on your thoughts and feelings. When you cling to the familiar, when you constantly react to the stress of your outer environment, you are giving your power away, siphoning your vital creative energy into the past.
But when you can find the courage to sit down, close your eyes, and train the animal of your body to surrender to the present moment, when you can elevate your emotion and feel gratitude before the event occurs, you call that energy back. You become pure, boundless consciousness. You step into the quantum field where all potentials exist, and you begin to literally biologicalize your future.
This raises a final, deeply provocative question for you to mull over. When we cling desperately to the familiar, even if it's painful, we are clinging to the past. Our survival brains are terrified of the unknown.
They really are.
But what if the unknown, the very void we fear the most, is actually the only place where true creation can happen?
Okay.
The next time you feel the deep discomfort of uncertainty, the anxiety of not knowing what happens next, ask yourself, are you losing your grip on reality, or are you just making room for a supernatural one?
Think about that diagnostic x-ray we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
We spend our whole lives wanting to point to a jagged white line, wanting a physical explanation, wanting to blame the external world for our internal pain.
Right.
But what if the most powerful healing tool in the universe isn't something we can see on an X-ray? What if it's the invisible, electric, transformative power of our own elevated emotion? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, keep questioning the absolute limits of what you believe is possible.